Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I am jumping back into the Christmas spirit one more time to bring you 3 really neat rustic Christmas in July DIYs. But what I think is even more exciting is that I finally came across next year's calendars at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to give you a look into all of the goodness. I can't wait to share these with you, but first, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, don't forget to hit the drop-down menu and click all so you can get notified about all notifications. Then, join me over on Instagram and Facebook and join my crafting community. Sometimes I post behind-the-scenes content that I know you're not going to want to miss. All right, let's get started with these Christmas in July rustic DIYs. For this first DIY, I'm going to start off with a paint stick that I got from Lowe's, and this is the smaller size. And I'm simply going to start off by dipping a baby wipe in my Waverly Antique Wax and giving this paint stick a faux stain by just rubbing that wax all over. After that, I'm going to get out these jumbo popsicle sticks that I got in a pack from Walmart, and by using my miting shears at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to cut it in half. That way it comes together at a point, and then I am going to sand down what I just cut. I am going to make this into a tree, so I'm going to need it to be smaller at the top and then go wider towards the bottom. So I'm just using some scissors to cut the other end of my craft stick, and then I'm going to use one to use as a guide for the other one. Then of course I'm going to sand down my edges. Now I'm not going to glue anything down just yet. I just want to lay it all out to make sure I get the right sizing. Then after I am done with this craft stick, I'm going to grab another one and do the same thing, but this time I'm going to make sure that those craft sticks are longer than the ones on top. So here's where I'm going to grab that second craft stick, and by using my miter shears, I'm going to cut this at a 45-degree angle. Now you can see that the miter shears help with scoring it and getting exactly where to cut, but then I did have to go in with my scissors and actually make the cut. And then to cut off the other end, I just sized it to the craft sticks on top of it. That way, like I said, they're a little bit longer. And then I'm going to do this one more time to another craft stick, and again I'm going to make that one just a little bit longer than the middle pair. After all my wood pieces were cut, I'm going to take this inside of a cookie baking sheet that I had left over from another DIY, and I'm going to use the jumbo craft stick as a guide to cut out the width of the baking sheet. Then I'm just going to cut one strip, and then I'm going to again use my miter shears to do that 45-degree angle. Now the miter shears are not going to cut through, but again I just kind of used it as a line so I knew where to take my scissors and cut. So then what I'm going to do is put the baking sheet underneath the wood on top, and then I'm going to make the baking sheet just a little bit longer than the top 2 pieces. And I'm going to continue this with a second set and a third set. So I'm going to have 3 wood pairs and then 3 baking sheet pairs. I hope that made sense. So as I was trying to get my baking sheet pieces underneath my wood pieces, everything kept moving. So I did decide to go ahead and hot glue my wood pieces down, and then I hot glued one aluminum piece to the other aluminum piece. You'll see here in a second, but basically I just made a V with the baking sheet and glued them together, but I did not glue them down to the actual paint stick underneath. I hope that made sense. So as I'm creating these other baking sheet pairs to go on my tree, I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new, I want to thank you so much for choosing to stop by today. I truly hope that you enjoy what you see. And if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back and for all of your support. I promise you, I am making my way through the comments. I know I am so behind on replying and responding to a lot of them, but if you commented in the last couple weeks and I have not commented back, just know that I absolutely read it and I do appreciate your comment, and I am going through all of them and trying to reply. I am so sorry I am so behind, but I do appreciate all the comments and all of your wonderful support. So thank you so much. So as you can see, as I am doing the baking sheet pieces, I am making sure that they are just a little bit longer than the wood pieces on top, because again, this is going to be a tree, so it needs to start smaller at the top and then get wider at the bottom. So basically, I'm just doing the same thing all the way down. After I had all of my pieces cut, I faux stained the wood pieces just like I did the paint stick by dipping a baby wipe in some antique Waverly wax and just rubbing all over the wood. Next, I took the baking sheet pieces and I painted those in my Christmas green apple barrel acrylic paint. Once those were dry, it was time to glue those pieces onto my tree. Now, this project was actually an inspiration from something I saw, I believe, on Kirkland's website, and I thought it was super cute and that I could make it out of things that I already had, but it's not going to look exactly like that one. But I also, after the fact, kind of thought that it might have been a good idea for me to hot glue these baking sheet pieces to the front of other wood pieces to give it more stability, but I still think it came out super cute. Now, after I had those green pieces glued on, I just took my Waverly Antique Wax and a chippy brush, and I just brushed over the green paint. Now, you do want to be careful, and this is why you have to make sure that your green paint is completely dry, because in that middle one, you can see that I accidentally rubbed some of the green paint off. Now, right here, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to repaint that little section, but again, just make sure that all of your paint is completely dry before you distress it. To make a stand for my tree, I'm taking 4 tumbling tower blocks and I'm going to glue 2 of them together, fat side down, facing each other. And then I'm going to faux stain those blocks with the Waverly Antique Wax and a baby wipe. And then I'm going to take those other tumbling tower blocks and do the same thing. Then to put this together, I'm going to add some hot glue to the back of one set of tumbling tower blocks, and I'm going to glue it to the bottom of this stick. Now you want to make sure to stand your tree up so you know that the tumbling tower blocks and the paint stick are flush to the surface. So you don't want the stand of the tree sticking out a little bit longer than it should. And if you do it right, it should stand up. After that, I took this wooden star that I also got from the Dollar Tree, and I hot glued it to another piece of that baking sheet. And then I'm simply going to cut it out. Now, at first, I started using my scissors to cut it out, and then I switched to a knife because I thought I could get a closer cut and a cleaner cut, and then I kind of went back and forth between the knife and my scissors. Then after it was all cut down, I simply just wrapped around the edges that were hanging and just kind of smushed them to the back. I folded them around. That way there was a nice clean edge. After that, I took the Waverly Antique Wax and my chippy brush, and I distressed that star so it was not so bright silver and aluminum. Next, I took this little stick, and you can use a toothpick or any kind of little stick you have, and I faux stained that. And now I'm going to hot glue it to the back of my star. Now you want to make sure to line up your star so the stick is in the middle of two of the peaks, I guess, of the V part. I don't know how to describe it. So once that is glued on, I'm going to glue it to the back of my tree. Now I do want to be able to see the stick a little bit because that's how it looked in the Kirkland's one, and I kind of liked that, so I hot glued it up a little bit so the stick was peeking above. After that, I took some duct tape, and I'm going to put a piece of that over that stick just to give it a little bit more of reinforcement. I also put a little piece of duct tape on the star and the stick as well. Next, I'm going to take this little piece of a garland that I had left over, and I did already give this a haircut, so it was very crazy and wild, and I did trim down all the bristles, that way it wasn't so crazy and wild, and I hot glued it to the top of my wood pieces. Finally, to add that little special touch, I took the darker berries and I just hot glued a bunch of them on top of the garland. And that completed this super cute, rustic, and really neat Christmas tree, and I think it kind of has a little primitive vibe to it as well, but I absolutely love this, and I cannot wait to put it out in my Christmas decor in December, and I think it's going to fit perfectly into my rustic Christmas home. What do you think? For my next DIY, I'm going to start off with this circle sign from the Dollar Tree, and by using my hairdryer and a scraper, I'm going to take 1,000 years to scrape this sticker off of the back. Once my back was clean, I sanded it down just a little bit to get off any of the glue residue, and now I'm going to give this a good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white. After that, I'm going to take one of the brand new Farmhouse 2022 calendars that I got from the Dollar Tree, and if you have been in the crafting community for a while, you know that these are hard to get your hands on, but if you do, you are so excited. These are so popular because look at the amazing graphics and the pictures in these calendars. They are amazing, and a lot of crafters love making DIYs with them because they are farmhouse and they're rustic and they fit right in to their decor, and it's just gorgeous. So I, of course, am going to use the December page that has this little mason jar, and it says Merry Christmas with some Christmas picks and florals. So I ripped it out of the calendar, and I am going to Mod Podge it down on that board. Now, the reason why I painted it white was because I didn't want any of the darker MDF color to come through. So I'm just going to apply a really even coat of Mod Podge on my circle, and then I'm going to very carefully put my calendar page on top. Now, these calendar pages are very, very thin, so in my experience, it's nearly impossible to not get wrinkles, but just do the best you can. I mean, just pull it as tight as you can without ripping it. I'm going to use my brayer tool to go ahead and help me flatten it down and get out as many wrinkles as I can, but just be very careful because these are very thin and they can rip easily. So I'm just using that brayer to flatten it down. And just as a side note, if you ever see any supplies that I'm using, like the miter shears or this brayer, check my description box below because I do have links to all of those really neat tools that you can go ahead and check out and get yourself one if you would like. So all of those are in my description box. So after I have that glued down, I just took a pair of scissors and I'm cutting off the excess paper, and then I'm going to take my sanding sponge and I'm going to sand around my circle to give it that nice clean edge. Now, when you do this, please again be very careful because this paper is thin, and you want to also sand in the down direction, but that's going to give you that nice clean finish. After my board was all sanded down, I went over the paper one more time with some Mod Podge so I could protect the paper and also seal it in. Next, I decided I wanted it to be a little bit more distressed, so I took my chippy brush and that Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just dry brushing over the image. Now, if you like it as it is, absolutely keep it. You do not have to do this step. I just wanted to make it a little bit darker. After that, I took some twine and I'm wrapping a piece of it around my fingers several times, 4 of my fingers, several times, and because I'm going to make a bow. Next, I'm going to cut a longer piece and I'm going to double it up to make the tails. But first, I'm going to cut a short piece to go ahead and tie it in the middle. That way it actually creates the bow. And then this is where I'm going to take the longer piece, double it up, and then I'm going to tie it around the middle, making sure that both of my ends are even. And then one side is a loop, so I do cut that, so that way it's just 2 separate pieces. And then I'm going to kind of fluff it up and hot glue it on the top of my mason jar. This is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving my content and that you would like to see more. So YouTube will put my videos in your suggested videos. So hit that like button if you would love to see more DIYs. After that, I'm going to take more of this baking sheet and I'm going to cut a small piece down to fit on top of my circle. Now, I am making sure to round out the edges because I want to make this whole thing look like an ornament, like a bulb. So I am rounding it out because this is going to be that silver part. Next, I'm applying a good amount of hot glue towards the top. Then I'm just going to push that on there. After that, I'm going to distress this a little bit by, again, using my Waverly Antique Wax and my chippy brush. And I'm just going to dry brush over the silver part, but I am going to go a little darker around the edges. After that, I'm going to take this floral wire and I'm going to cut off a smaller piece. Then I'm going to wrap it in that baking sheet. Now it is easy to wrap because the baking sheet is kind of flimsy, so it's nice. So it is easy to wrap and you just need a very small piece to wrap it, but I'm going to use this to make that ring. Now of course I would have preferred an actual silver ring up top, and you'll see what I mean in a second, but I didn't have any, so I just had to use what I had on hand, and this was the best I could come up with, and I still think it looked really cute. So I just wrapped that entire thing in the baking sheet, and now I'm curving it. I'm making it into a circle, and then I'm going to flip over my sign and use a generous amount of hot glue and hot glue my little wire up to the top to make it look like an ornament hanger. Then again, I'm going to take my duct tape and I'm going to tape it down just to give it an extra hold. Now, I did notice though that when I was taking pictures, it kind of started to slip out. So you may want to use E6000 or a super glue to glue that just to give it a even stronger hold. Next, I just dry brushed over that with that Waverly Antique wax. Then I kind of thought that it was missing something, so there are berries in the image, so my mom actually thought of this idea to add some berries on top of my ribbon or my bow. So I'm cutting out the little berries from it, and then I'm just going to hot glue those on either side of the middle part of my bow. Then I'm going to take a small pine cone that I got from this little pack of pine cones from the Dollar Tree, and oddly enough I actually picked this pack up in the springtime, and they said that they're pumpkin scented, so I didn't really smell them that much, but I guess they're supposed to smell like pumpkins. And I hot glued that in the middle of my berries, and I thought that was so cute because there are pine cones in that image as well. Then to finish this off, I cut off a piece of twine. I'm doubling it up, and then I'm going to loop it through my piece of wire, tie a knot at the top, cut off the excess, and now I have the hanger for my little ornament. I love how this came out. It is a great use of the calendar, and I was so excited to use the calendar, of course, and I think it's so rustic and so cute. What do you think? For my last DIY, I'm going to use this rectangle sign that I got from the Dollar Tree around Easter time, but of course they have these all year round through the different seasons, so you can choose any one, it doesn't matter. And the first thing I'm going to do is take off the twine hanger, then I'm going to flip it over, and by using my Dollar Tree spackle, I'm going to fill the holes. Then once my spackle is dry, I'm going to sand off the excess so that way it's ready for me to paint. Next, I'm going to give this board 2 coats of Waverly chalk paint in the color white. Once my board was dry, I'm going to flip it so it's vertical. Then I'm going to take a ruler and put it in the middle of my board. I'm going to use a pencil to trace the line on the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to continue drawing lines going down but I am lining up the top with the line above it. After I get to the bottom, I switch and do the same thing on the top, so I have lines going all the way down my board. Then to make this look even more like shiplap, I'm going to take my finger and just rub it along my pencil lines to give it that shadowing. I have really been loving using this technique lately, and I think that this is the perfect technique to use to give it that shiplap look, and I've used a bunch of different methods, but this is definitely the one. After that, I took my chippy brush and Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just dry brushing over my board, and I am paying attention to the edges because I wanted to highlight those, so I made them just a little bit darker, but I just distressed my entire board. Then I gave that a nice good sanding so everything, all of the paints all blended in. Next, I took this pack of metal stars. Now I do not end up using this star, but I'm just using this as a placeholder because I am planning to put a star on top of the board. And I'm going to take this garland and I am going to line it up. I'm going to have a little piece at the top, and it's going to be narrow. Then I'm just going to go back and forth and just make it like a wavy shape, topsy-turvy shape, I guess. And then I'm going to give this a haircut, just like that other DIY. So I'm trimming this all down. Now, of course, ideally, I'd rather do this over a trash can, and that's going to be my advice for you, to do it over a trash can. But if not, I have my handy-dandy ladybug to vacuum it all up. After it's all trimmed down, I am going to take this string of lights, the fairy lights that I got from the Dollar Tree, and this is actually the copper wire. I didn't realize that, but it actually ended up looking really cute. And what I'm going to do is use my crocodile, and this is like a big hole punch, but it punches through wood and metal and all kinds of different materials, and I'm just going to punch a hole at the top of my board. And then starting from the back of my board, I'm going to string the lights all the way through. After that, I'm going to wrap my fairy lights around my garland. I'm going to go all the way down, and then I had some left over, so I wrapped it right back up. Next, I'm going to take this berry garland and I'm going to start at the top of my green garland, and I'm going to wrap that going all the way down. Next, I'm going to start hot gluing my tree to the board. So I start at the very tippy top, and then I again just kind of create that very wavy pattern. So I'm going to kind of bounce it out to the right and then to the left, but I am starting small and then getting wider as I go down. I just wanted this to be kind of whimsical and fun, and this kind of actually reminded me of the Whoville tree from How the Grinch Stole Christmas, but my daughter absolutely loves the Grinch, so I think this is going to fit right into our home decor, but I thought that this was kind of fun. So I did have to put a generous amount of hot glue down on every part, and I'm only gluing on the ends, or like at every wraparound, if that makes sense, so every curve, but I am just doing my best to hold it there until the glue kind of sets up a little bit. And I did find that that did help. So I just hot glued until the garland was all used up. And you can see how it's kind of forming the shape of a tree. And I just think this is so cute. But you can see there that I am holding it down so that way the glue can set. So after I have it all glued down, I'm going through and kind of reinforcing some parts, and then I'm going to go through and trim it up just a little bit more for any long little pieces that I missed. That way it doesn't look so crazy and it looks a little cleaner. Now for my star, I decided to use one of these little metal stars off of that USA sign from 4th of July. And I decided that I'm going to hot glue it down on top of the hole that I had to make. So I really liked that because it hid the hole, but it also let us see the top of the tree. Next, I'm going to take a jumbo craft stick and I'm going to cut a little rectangular piece so it is the trunk of our tree, and I'm going to stain this with the Waverly Antique Wax. After that, I'm going to hot glue it down to the bottom of my tree. Next, I wanted the star to match a little better with the rest of the tree, and I just felt like the silver was just it just didn't look right. So I decided to kind of pounce on some of that Waverly Antique Wax to make it more of a copper. Then I flipped my sign over and I added some batteries to the battery box. This does take 2 AA batteries, and I thought that when this thing lit up, it really brought it to life. Then I'm going to pull my battery box all the way down, and I'm going to hot glue it to the side of my board. Now you want to make sure that you hot glue it screw side up so you can change the batteries, and I also made sure to have the little on-off button facing up as well. Then to complete this, I'm going to add a hanger. So I took some of this nautical rope, I tied a knot, and then hot glued the knot down on one of the sides of my board, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Then I'm going to cut off the excess rope on either side. I love this piece. I think it's so different, it's whimsical, and so much fun. And like I said, when this is lit up, I really do think that it completes it and it gave it that final touch that it absolutely needed. And I just think it's so festive. What do you think? I really love how all of these DIYs came out today. They're just so rustic and festive, and they are totally my style. I kind of think that some of these have a little primitive vibe to them too, so I am loving these. I have to say, I think my favorite though is going to be the second one, which is the ornament. I just really love the image in the calendars, and hello, how about those calendars, right? Definitely, if you see some, grab a few of each type because they are amazing. I love all of the images. I think they are gorgeous and really fun to craft with. You're going to have to let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite, and let me know if you will be recreating any of these pieces for the holiday season that will actually be here before we know it. I hate to say it. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, if you would be so kind to give this video a thumbs up because it really does help my channel to grow. I can't wait to share more DIYs with you, so stay tuned because we're getting into fall and Halloween, which are my absolute favorites. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!